Welcome to your last live stream in data preparation and workflow management. So we're approaching the end of this lecture series, and I hope you can stick with me today as I walk you through a final set of reflections about this course and what you've learned and what you've not learned and how to use it in your future. I'll provide, just like in online data collection management this morning, I'll provide you a brief course summary with my lessons learned in interacting with you guys. And I'll provide you a few notes on how I think you can use this for your future in your study program, but also after the studies. I'll briefly touch upon course evaluation and then spend some time on exam preparation. You have had the opportunity to ask questions in the WhatsApp chat. There are a couple of unresolved issues where we'll have to interact with you via TeamViewer. So make sure to set up TeamViewer if you still have a question during the stream itself, so that we can then efficiently walk through your remaining questions. Should you not have installed TeamViewer yet, and you do have a question, make sure to follow the setup instructions in the chat. This seems like almost one recorded message I could just like play automatically at every beginning of the lecture. All right, so where is dPrep? Why did you take dPrep other than you were forced into it because you're studying marketing analytics? Well, we're pretty good here at Tilburg in teaching you these boxes, but nobody has ever taught you how to tie these boxes together. That's dPrep, right? Like, how do we go from collecting the data to prepping the data to putting it to an analysis and then actually evaluating and deploying your results? That's the blue arrows here. That's what dPrep is, and that's mostly automation. But in these arrows too, it's the GitHub experience of collaborating on coding projects, be it on a private GitHub repository that nobody sees or on even publicly available GitHub repositories. You have just been able or maneuvered yourself in a situation where you can do that, and you haven't been done that before. And maybe the last thing, what these arrows signify, is that you've become quite efficient in it. I've been seriously impressed seeing some of you work on the team projects, and you sticking to some of the rules I laid down. I hope you didn't find them too restrictive, but you'll eventually notice it's going to boost your productivity, as I promised, tremendously. And then what dPrep also did is we zoomed in on two of these boxes, which is data preparation. So we had 2 tutorials on that, which is using our Markdown, but then also using Tidyverse and dplyr to prep data. Especially, I've spent a lot of time in the coaching sessions telling you how to write loops, and loading all of the data directly from your Google Drives or from inside Airbnb. That's all data preparation skills that will become handy. And then finally, I'm looking forward to seeing your deployment steps in regression outputs or like PDFs that you've generated. So also you were exposed to a gallery of things that you could do in this respect. And actually in our program, we didn't have these components before. So that's dPrep. And the framework of this course was that I promised you to improve your coding skills, your collaboration skills, and your automation skills. And I hope I have delivered on those larger learning goals, and you applied them throughout this research process. That's kind of the setup here. And if you can't get make to run and you are frustrated at this point in time, or you may have frustrated in the past, zoom out, look at this picture. This is what you did. And probably you can fill in each of those components for you now and tell me what you've learned. And I hope there have been, lessons learned. I summarized some of these lessons myself. So what is it that I think you've learned, or that I even learned when I started versioning and doing project management with GitHub? The first thing is Scrum is a method used by practitioners, and we can have our own adaptation of the Scrum method and implement it on our project board. Backlog, current sprint, to do, in progress, done. That's like the easy way of starting a project, and it's a useful thing. So, for example, I'm collaborating on this project with my PhD student Bobby, who has been a student in this course before. Actually, last year she's been a student in this course, and look at her project board. It's updated 3 hours ago. She uses this every day. It is the go-to place whenever I have a call with Bobby. All I do is look at this project board and, hey, look, stuff isn't done. A few things are in progress, and many things haven't entered the sprint yet, which is okay, right? So, but when next time I meet her, we can discuss, well, does she need support on the in progress, and how do we get those to-dos to move into, into the progress and done. It's the go-to place whenever I have a call with people that I advise. So use it. But writing issues, which is one ingredient, can be hard. And throughout this course, actually, I added a building block on writing issues. By the way, our Surge is much better, so try it out. Write GitHub issues that get the job done, which is all of the reflections on what makes good issues. And I hope that you have been able to incorporate some of those. I didn't suggest it to the large crowd, but I did suggest it to a couple of teams when I was coaching you guys. So, check it out, because good issues are one of the key success ingredients of managing your project very well, right? If you ask people to work on a poorly defined task, chances they do something completely different. So better spend that extra half an hour on defining what should be done before you ask them to spend a lot of time working on it. You may be in the position of having to work off issues, then that is still relevant, because, when do you close issues? Well, we got a whole bunch of notes on closing issues and when you should close the issue and what you should put into that issue when you close it. So really, it's something that anybody can use, either those that manage a project or the ones that actually move these items from the back, from to do to in progress and done. I put a lot of structure on it, and I exerted some effort showing you and returning to that structure each week, and I hope it worked out. So any reflection on that? I'm curious. So Lorenzo, did your team end up using this, or do you just do a beautifying, board at the very end so that I'm happy?
We mostly update via team call than with issues, but we use them. Yeah.
So what did you do instead? You said.
We mostly were doing team calls.
Team calls.
And, yeah. Also, we were working a bit together. So. Yeah.
Good. Okay, that's possible too. If the project grows, chances, well, for one, maybe the issues were too broadly defined so that you couldn't independently work on them. Number two, maybe you just enjoyed working with each other. So that's why you met up and worked together on those. I just see that for long-term projects, it's a very valuable thing to do. So I hope you can return back to it. Wouter, Dogga, your teams, how did you manage the process?
We used this, and then we did have basically a weekly meeting in order to actually set up the issues. And then we worked separately.
And do you think it was cumbersome to do this? Do you think it helped you?
Yeah, I think so. It makes the whole project really, insightful, or like everybody knows what's going on, and you can work efficiently.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for some it works, for some it doesn't, but at least that's one way. Find your way to manage projects. If you do things chaotically or just by gut feeling, and you feel you're running behind facts, get a system. And this is one system. Okay. Dogga, what about your team?
Yeah, we use it, but not too efficiently, honestly.
Yeah, but it's hard because you almost need a coach that teaches you.
Yeah, but I think it was quite useful for sure. But we also were doing more meetings, so it was both ways a bit.
Yeah, it's a balance, right? So if you're capable of doing all things on your own, probably you work more independently. But if you still need to learn and have interaction, need interaction, maybe meetings are more efficient. Yeah, I mean, good experience. Versioning can be super powerful. Like, who rolled back changes that you accidentally did and recovered files? I don't know. Anybody ever did this? Unrolling? Maybe that's something I need to check. Unrolling previous changes. Roshini.
Hello.
Did you unroll any changes on GitHub?
Sorry, I just joined.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We're just chatting about versioning. And the thing is, like, did you ever use GitHub's feature to roll back to a previous file? Like, because you messed things up, or because you wanted to revive something that you deleted, but then wanted to get back?
Oh, this is something I was actually wondering about. I haven't done it, but yeah, I was just wondering if it's something, if I make some changes, if I can get back to the older version and
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, right? Check it out. Like, if you go to this course as GitHub, Hans Data course dPrep. If you go through this course and check out the content, and you click at the history, and you see the entire history of how this course evolved. Suppose this is a research project, right? And you can browse the repository at any given state that it has ever been in. For example, you know, how did the repository look like on this September 23? Well, let's do it older. Let's make it really funny, right? But this is like the first edition of this course, March 12, 2021. Now let's check out the code. And there you go. This is the entire project at this stage. You can look at, you know, how the source code looked, how I thought about the class. And now this is for a research project. So obviously, yes, you can go back. You may have not done this, but versioning is extremely powerful. So actually I made a mental note about, you know, maybe having this more and featured more prominently in your exercises. That's a good one. Actually, I'm adding plus exercises on solving problems with Git. I'm just making notes for myself. So yeah, going back to previous files runners, exactly that's what I mean. So roll back whenever you want, or it helps you actually to have clean files, right? Because everything is versioned, you can get it back. So that shouldn't keep you from like cleaning up stuff. And many of you had this problem. Oh no, I can push. Yeah, there's a merging conflict, and that's something that happens all the time. But at least merging conflicts are like, they're like thrown in your face, right? So if you collaborate on Dropbox or Drive, you can just overwrite each other's changes, and you lose stuff. So here we have explicit conflicts in files, but then at least we're able to solve them. And what I learned personally is that the Git graphical user interface in R, like this little Git tab, that's extremely cool. I've never used it before, but it's so much simpler than like the terminal stuff that I've been, you know, learning a long way. So, you know, maybe I make that more prominent in the next edition of this course. You know, I'm a bash guy, so I like writing code there, but I just imagine it's so much easier to use that interface. So if you haven't done so, you know, try it out. It's pretty intuitive. And then also what you learn using GitHub is to collaborate to open source projects. Well, I'm still waiting for some of your first contributions to Tilburg Science Hub, for example, or to the course page, you know. Some of you have tried that actually, but the world is big and there are like open source projects in any kind of area that you may be interested in. So check it out. You know, maybe you can volunteer on a project and make something better. And you have the skills to do this. When I talk to you now and ask you, can you issue a pull request and solve that issue? You're like, yeah, I can do that. So, you know, you can be proud. Like that's new stuff that you wouldn't have thought you would ever learn. It's pretty useful. And because you know how to collaborate on open source projects, you know, you also know how to keep your project safe. You know, just forking it. You will never kill the big project. You will never kill the original one in your fork, right? And when you're happy with your work, just issue a pull request. Hope that doesn't sound too difficult for most of you. And then you learned the tools used in business. I mean, the biggest firms in the world use GitHub to develop stuff, work together on stuff, and you are part of that party now. But you know, let's acknowledge it takes a lot of time to become really good at. It took me years, right? So don't think you can't do it yet. Just always return to it. Make it part of your daily routine to use these, because only then you will be able to leverage its power. What did we learn from data exploration? Well, you know, our Markdown is pretty cool, right? You can mix code with like reporting stuff. So I use it all the time in developing my projects. So you can, you know, produce documents that you can cleanly share. Other stuff that we focused on are what are the components of a research project? Well, that one was a little hard. The components of a research project are like, you know, you have source code, you have data, and you have generated files. For many of you, it's still a little unclear. Like when I advised you in the coaching in the coaching sessions, some of you have it all mixed up still. So like the ingredients of your project are, you write source code. The source code works with some raw data, and it generates stuff. These are the three key ingredients. And then the next step is, well, you've got pipeline stages. Why do we do that? Well, just to define like a project has different stages. So for me, it's like parsing the raw data in a scraping project, then preparing a final data set, then analyzing it, then reporting it. But, you know, for other projects, it may be quite different. Like, you know, you may think of other things. So maybe you work with a clean data set. You don't have to clean it. Well, then just do the analysis. Maybe you have two analyses, right? A first stage analysis and then a second stage analysis. Well, then just call it first stage and second stage in your modules, right? Make it your own. I don't mean to impose that final directory structure on you. It must make sense to you. That's the most important thing. And we talked about these project components. Using our markdowns and the methods that you've learned here helps you to do data quality checks, right? Report on the number of non-availables. I have seen many of you who just look at a data set at the beginning of this class and just kick out all of the non-observables, all of the NAs. But you lose complete control about what observations you retain. Well, now I hope you've learned to like look at stuff individually and make informed decisions on whether something is NA, or maybe you have to set it to a different value, and to be in control about the observations that you lose out when you clean your data set. When you do so, work with data that was scraped, but maybe in the future you're going to work with data provided by a data supplier. So if things just don't square up, well, shoot an email and ask them about it. You have the ability to audit data sets now. So, use this skill. Just don't take data for granted. Data is always messy, and data mostly of the time is wrong when you see it for the first time. So be in touch again, dare to ask questions. In data prep, well, you thought about why do we have to clean data? And there's a video that I recorded, and you can rewatch it by following that link. The short story here is, well, the data that we get, raw data, is almost never in the format that we really need it. We need to reshape it to make it fit our analysis. We need to clean it to make it fit our analysis. So watch that video if you haven't done so yet. Data preparation code can be really, really, really complex, but when you break it down into like manageable chunks, like different files, or like you have good comments, you can actually work with it. If you have an operation on your mind, but you just don't remember the command, then just use cheat sheets, right? Have a library of code snippets. Have that library of code snippets on your personal GitHub profiles, because I hope every project that you'll do from now onwards will live on Git, because then you can just like search your GitHub profile. I actually use it all of the time for anything. So what I always forget is how to make PNG plots, like, plots for my data. So the only thing I need to do is write PNG and check in this user, and I get all of the code snippets that I've ever written to save stuff. And then it's here, PNG, and then resolution is 150, units it's inch, and then that's my preferred, width and height of the picture. It's not so important now what I exactly do here, but it is my personal library. It's been growing for 10 years, so it's very, very helpful for me. Do the same thing, invest in it now, and then in the future, this is surely going to pay off. When writing code files, something I learned is to have explicit input, transformation, output blocks in each file, except maybe the one that when you download new stuff. That keeps things tidy, and then it also helps you to automate that whole process. What's input, transformation, output, Wouter, in your situation? Come up with an example.
I think the input would be the CSV file, the raw data, and then the transformation would be deleting columns and whatever, and then you get an output like the file you're going to use for analysis.
Yeah, exactly. And then the analysis reads in the output file of the previous block, and so forth and so on. And it's like, they like this, it's like a factory, right? Like think of a factory, like, in comes metal and out comes a car, right? So, okay, first the metal is going to be, I don't know, pressed into the shape of the car. That's the first thing. Then the next machine comes, take that shape of the car, which is pressed in the form of a car, and puts it into color, right? Puts it into like, it's painting it, right? Okay, the color is different. And this is, well, another pipeline was there that built the engine. Now things are going to be put together, right? It's individual building blocks. The guy who puts paint on the car, he doesn't care about how the metal was like put into this, right? They don't even know about how this is done, right? They just receive a new input, which is an unpainted car. They do the transformation, they paint it, and then they pass it on to the next station. You have built a data factory. And if you think of data like this, it's going to be extremely helpful. And it's crucial for running automation processes later. And then comes, pipeline building and automation. It gave you a lot of clarity of where to store stuff, right? Because most of the times Make just doesn't run because the inputs are not properly transferred because you haven't named the targets correctly. It's a mess, right? And you get frustrated with Make because you're like, oh, why do I have to use this tool? It doesn't work. Well, you didn't set up your project very well yet. So it forces you to get things right. And then you think you got it right, but then again, there is an error. So you have to correct it all of the time. My biggest lesson learned about makefiles is do it step by step. Don't write one big, beautiful makefile because, including me, we will all fail in doing so. Just automate the downloading step. And when you run make again, make sure make doesn't want to run anymore because it has realized that the data has downloaded. Okay, now let's add data preparation. Does it work? Are all packages installed? So forth and so on. Type make again. Does it still run? Does it realize it has built the data preparation? Okay, now we can move on, right? It's an iterative process, step by step by step. Run the work others have done. I mean, how great it is actually that you have all access to each other's repositories. They're all public, right? Just download it and run it and see what happens. It's the ultimate check. So if you have friends and other teams, just ask them to run your workflow before submitting the work to me. You know, that's a good check actually to do, right? To make sure. If you have written make in a correct way, I mean, if you have set up your makefile correctly, it should run. So you can replicate my work, your work, somebody else's work, right? Like the text mining tutorial we have on Tilburg Science. Helps you discover mistakes in your code, right? Like when we run code in R, we select a little bit of code, control enter, we again select a little code and you know, it runs and it's good. But then when you run make, suddenly there's an error. Well, this is because you may have run your stuff in your R file in a different order than how it is actually written up. So make automation helps you stay sharp because, you know, it just runs it top down. And when there is a mistake, you'll know, right? So you write bulletproof code that works when you call it. Like packages that weren't loaded or the order of cells when that is wrong. And it does save you time in the end, but you do have a lot high learning costs when you do it. So I hope that by now the learning cost is sunk, you've invested in this and that you're gonna now productively use it. If you don't use it within the next 2 months, you'll forget about it, which would be a shame because many of you will only start working on your thesis, I don't know, from Jan onwards. So make sure to keep that knowledge like alive so that you can use it. Fork my repository, fork your friends' repositories, take copies of that work, save it and use it. That's why we do open science. And then finally, make allows you to continuously improve your documentation and code. Because you don't need to care about how everything runs. Sometimes you just have this idea of adding a new variable or improving the documentation. You just add it to the code. You know, that's it. You don't even need to run it because you know everything is already explicit. But that way you can quickly return to your project, add something, and then, you know, work on another project. Now, let me reflect on dPrep. So I think my most important reflection is take time to let it sink in. You're rushed, right? I mean, you have to submit the project and there's ODCM, it's also a project. You need to trust my choice of teaching you this and eventually your hard work is going to pay off. I talked to one team on Tuesday and that team said, now everything is falling into place. And actually it's quite of an early observation because usually that observation only comes a little later, like, you know, a few weeks after the exam when you actually work on a different project. So it's good that you have that realization, but many of you will not have that yet. But just trust me, that realization is all going to come if you're, you know, doing analytics in the future. So take time to let it sink in. It's not for this course that I taught you this, but it's more for your data analysis, careers that I taught you this. Trust in my choice, and it will help you tremendously. It's amazing to see how you have grown, actually. You know, many of you have never used R before, and look where you are now. This is amazing. So you start from scratch. Others thought they could program, but then I hope I could still challenge you a little bit with code. So that's good too. And I saw a lot. So different projects, data sets, software programs, way of doing things, some videos that you use, some websites that you use. So thanks a bunch for inspiring me too. Let's try to look ahead. So how can you use this during your studies? Gradually implement it everywhere, in team projects, in other classes. You know, there was a team that asked me the questions. The way Arjen in Introduction to Research for Marketing taught us to define dummy variables, is this also relevant for this course? That was a question I got. Yes, it is relevant. And the whole point is that we don't teach you to pass exams. We teach you because we think it's important for your careers. So, you know, there's no reason this knowledge needs to stay in this class. In the very same way that how to creating dummy variables shouldn't stay in Arjan's class, right? It's a universal thing that you do. And, you know, I'm guilty as charged. As a student, I didn't realize that either. So, you know, use it across the board if this is a method that works for you. Like some projects, I mean, and then again, do it gradually. Like some projects, you know, they're a mess, but just having a better directory structure already works, maybe. You know, other projects may need more. Maybe you want a little automation script to make things fly. I don't know, right? But don't like do everything on everything, but think wisely about what you've learned and how you could apply it in different projects. Realize it takes time to learn, and it took me years to become proficient. Use this for your thesis. If you're gonna be enrolled for a thesis with me, that's our weekly management that we do. Like, you know, you're gonna work on a GitHub repository and you're gonna, you know, do ping pong with issues because they're still learning to do for you guys, but it helps me stay on top of your projects, and it helps you keep making progress and pushing. If you work with other professors and you want to use this and the professor says no, don't trust it, because most professors don't use this. Actually, you're one of the first generations at a university that actually gets, you know, to learn these kind of things. So teach those, even those that like stand above you in theory, your professors, and, you know, just apply this. You're more like, you're open for this, and that's good. But just be aware, you're also one of the first groups that knows this. So, you know, teach others about it, including those that are hierarchically not in the same level. And they will actually see the power of this too. Build your job market profile. Like we have talked about this a bit, but like have your own website. Use GitHub and host your website. You know, it makes you look good. Search for examples. I think Roy Klasebos, he has his whole source code for his website online. You can look at my page, which is at handelsdata.com/website, I believe. No, not this, but personal website. I don't know. Just look at my profile. But many people do have source code of their personal websites open. You can just copy it and make it your own. You're going to look good when you go on the market. You know, have a Hugo site with your CV. Pin your best repositories. So when people go to your profile, like the profile of Tilburg Science Hub, they see what you care about. You know, curate this. Use this like your Instagram profile. You know, make yourself shine to people that care about coding. And then as a final bit here, during your studies, you can become part of the open science community. You can contribute to Tilburg Science Hub, for example. You can join our lab even as a volunteer or as a paid research assistant. We're about to hire, I think, more. So, you know, stay tuned, and maybe you can subscribe to our channel on LinkedIn to stay up to date. LinkedIn.com. And then we have a group called Tilburg. Let me see. Not this one. Let me see. I think it's, well, this is the admin view company. I'll just put it up. So subscribe to that page and stay up to date when we hire if you're interested in a student job. You can also join the Tilburg Open Science community. The link is here. I'll put it in the chat too, if you think this is something that you want to contribute to, because open science is way bigger than just like open, right? It's like a new way of doing things. And after your studies, be confident in the skill set that Tilburg gave you. You have the option to become a data wizard. Well, like me is maybe an exaggeration, but like, you know, get inspired by your teachers. And, you know, the things that you like, you could just like, you know, take in. How do we present our, I'll answer this in a bit. Automate your stuff, save time for the things you love. Most importantly, seize opportunities as a researcher or entrepreneur, or as a citizen that knows data and tech opportunities. You know, your skill set is not a fixed process. So see the individual parts and mix and mingle them. Like the very same way that you have a box with Lego building bricks in different colors and shapes. And every time that you start, you can like, I don't know, build something else. That's exactly what dPrep is about. You have little building blocks now, and you can mix and mingle them in the most creative ways that I couldn't even imagine. I will go on a break now. So go through your slide deck. What you can do, you know, if you have other questions, what we will do after the break, we'll take a 10-minute break. So we're going to continue at 13:25. We are going through the example questions for the exam. So I'll put that link in the chat. So please read through that section if you haven't been able so. after the break, I'm happy to spend a final, I don't know, half an hour, let's see how much it is, on answering your very, very, very final questions about dPrep and maybe ODCM if you still have them, right? So I'll go on a break now, and I'll see you at 13:25 for the next part of this. So thanks a bunch already.